Some people say that if you really want to learn a language well, you have to live in the country. English is actually my best foreign language, but I've never lived in an English-speaking country. Hello everyone, it's Jan here, and today I'm wearing a suit. You might be wondering why I'm wearing a suit. Well, actually my sister's going to get married next Monday, and of course I need to look good for that. I bought a suit and was at home just trying it out. But today we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about learning English. Because on this channel we talk a lot about, well, you see me learning French and Portuguese and Russian and Thai and a few Cantonese, Japanese. And but I actually never talked about English, and English was actually the first foreign language that I learned, because my first language, my native language is Dutch, of course. At high school, I was really bad at English. I remember when I had an exam, and this was just before graduation, was like the final exams for English. It was an oral exam, and I had to read a story in English, and then afterwards my teacher was going to ask me questions about that story in English. And I remember that I was so nervous. I had learned English for, I think, 6 years, at high school. And when I read that text, I had no idea what I was reading. I was also really nervous. When I finished reading the text, he started to ask me questions. I had no idea what he was asking me. I was really bad at English. I was one of the worst students of my class. And he said, "Jan, you know what? You're doing such a bad job. I will just give you he gave me a 4.5 out of 10 score, which was obviously not enough to pass the exam. And he said, be wise and please never choose a career or a profession in the future for which you need English, because it's just not your strength. You're not good at it. Choose something else." And actually at the time I didn't really care, because English was indeed not very important for me. I lived in the Netherlands, in a small city in the south. We didn't need English anyway, only for if we go on a holiday. One or 2 weeks per year, but then most of the time just knowing a few words is enough. But then in 2007 I went to Costa Rica, where I wanted to learn Spanish, but there was a problem because I didn't even speak English. So I went to Costa Rica, I went to a language school there, and I met people from other countries. I met Americans, people from England, France, other European countries, and the lingua franca was of course English, because we couldn't speak Spanish very well. Now, I remember that I was really embarrassed at the time that people around me were having conversation in English and I could hardly follow them. And when they would ask me something, or I had to reply in English, of course, and I felt so embarrassed that I wasn't able to hold a decent conversation in English. And this was when I was 19. I think most of people in the Netherlands who are 19 speak much better, especially these days, much better English than I did at the time. I was not good at languages. You know, the thing is that I was bad at languages, but so I somehow I liked the world. I liked languages. I thought it was really cool if you could speak many languages. And I basically just accepted that I was bad at it, but I still could enjoy the process of, I don't know, I still felt inspired to learn these languages because of traveling, basically. So then when I went to China 2 or 3 years later, I started learning Chinese, and I met so many people from other countries. And again, I had to speak English with them. And I think at that time I spent almost a year in Asia, traveled around a lot. And of course I learned Chinese, but also I really started using I started using English. Actually, in Costa Rica, I also spoke a lot of English. When I came back from Costa Rica, from that trip, stayed there for 3 months, I felt much more confident, because I had to talk to other people in English. I was really forced. So yeah, that's basically the story how I learned English. I was really bad at school, but then when I started to need it for my personal relations, when I needed it as a language to function among friends, I simply spoke it a lot. And when I felt more confident and I actually started enjoying English, I also started reading in English, and now most of the content I consume on the internet, but also the books I read are all in English. Many people I chat, I think most people I chat to these days, I also chat in English. So eventually, you know, you can learn as much as you want, and you can study as much grammar as you think is necessary, but in the end, you need to speak the language, not only for English, but that's for basically any language. So the moral of the story that I share with you today, if there are any people that are trying to discourage you from a goal you want to reach, from a skill you want to learn, simply don't listen. The most important thing here is motivation. If you really like, if you're really inspired, if you're really motivated to learn a certain skill, it's not only about language learning, then just go for it. And it might take time, it might take more time than other people who are, for example, better at learning that particular skill, but eventually, if you have the passion, if you have the motivation, you will get there. And really, it's true. Not very long ago, I think it was 6 years ago, when I was in college, I had a speaking exam, and afterwards my teacher told me, he said, "Jan, your accent, it's so terrible." She said, "I have a grandmother who is 87 years old and who speaks better English than you do." And now I speak not only English, but also lots of other languages. So. But all this thanks to my passion for the world, basically, traveling, getting to know about all the culture and all the people. So if you want to learn any skill, but you feel that you are bad at it, then try to find another way to do it. If you are bad at, if you want to learn French, but you are bad at French at school, you're bad at learning French vocabulary and grammar, then find another way to do it. Find another way to find inspiration. But for example, listen to French songs, watching French television, where you can practice your French somewhere in your town. Travel to the country. Try to find other ways to become good at in that you want to become really good at. I think I said that correctly, right? That was it for today, and I have a question for you. If you are a native English speaker, then the question for you is, what do you think of that almost the entire world is learning English? Now, how do you feel about traveling to, I don't know, maybe the big cities in China? You check in a hotel and they speak English. What do you think about that? Doesn't it feel intimidating? I mean, if I go to, let's say, Africa and people start speaking Dutch to me, which happened recently, I feel pretty intimidated. How do you feel? How do you feel about that? And then if you learned English as a second language at school, for example, then let me know how you feel about learning English in school. Did you really learn English there, or you're still learning? Of course, we are all still learning, but do you feel that you learn more in school, or do you practice it more these days with people? And do you think that develops your English skill? Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.